My name is Jody Wenzel. I'm running for Hopkinton Town Council. Before I get into my background a little bit, I would like to take a moment to thank everyone for participating tonight, as well as all of you. I know we're all very busy. This is a much better turnout than we were expecting, and I'd like to thank you all for being here. I may be a little bit of a new face to some of you. Some of you may have known me from the Wind Advisory Board. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was raised in the Southern Tier near Binghamton and came to the North Country about 25 years ago to attend Clarkson. I graduated from Clarkson with degrees in chemical engineering, engineering management, and I have a master's in business administration. I've lived in Hopkinton for the past 20 years with my son, who is now 13 and attends Parrishville Hopkinton School. Several years ago, when the wind turbine project was really ramping up, I inquired and discovered how much of an impact it was going to have on our community. And I reached out to Sue and volunteered to be an alternate on the Wind Advisory Board. My alternate status lasted all of a week and a half, and due to people resigning and scheduling conflicts, I suddenly found myself the vice chairman of the Wind Advisory Board. This was a very difficult time for this community, and I was not fully prepared for what we were about to endeavor into when I started that. But over the course of many months and many heated conversations in this room, I developed a deep sense of pride in this community. And I think what resulted from that whole ordeal was a law that served the entire community. It spoke for everyone, not just a few. It took people into consideration and not dollars. And I want to make one thing very clear, because I know this is going to be a topic of this election and of concern for people. I am not opposed to renewable energy. I am not opposed to wind power, and I'm not opposed to solar power. And I know that my position on the wind board may have given some people that impression. What I am concerned about is one landowner's position or decisions affecting an entire community negatively. And I think that the law we created through that process represented the majority. And this country was built on representing the majority of the people, not just a few. And I really feel that we accomplished that through the law we put in place. I have worked throughout the North Country for the past 23 years, managing projects up to $15 million. I currently work as the VP of Engineering at a magnetics firm in Ogdensburg. I think our community is going to be faced with some significant issues very soon, whether it be the wind project that may or may not still be a concern, or the upcoming solar laws, sales tax issues. Okay.
Jody Wenzel, how would you describe the community of Hopkinton?
I think this community provides a very peaceful setting in a very tumultuous world, and I would like to see that preserved. Even when we were going through a really tough time, as Jeff said, pitting neighbor against neighbor with this wind project, there were still, those divides did not separate us entirely. I remember when it was getting really, really heated and there was animosity on both sides. Christmas morning, I was shoveling my driveway out because my plow guy broke down. Mr. Dick Aiken stopped with his tractor and dug me out, even though our opinions on the wind project at that time were very divided. And he got out, shook my hand, and said, "I appreciate everything you're doing for the town." And I think that describes what this community is perfectly.
Thank you. Wenzel, what is your vision for the future of Hopkinton and why?
I agree with Sue. I think that we need to work to make this a place where people want to live and want to stay. I think we can take a page out of the book of what Waddington has done with the Bassmasters tournament, not to that scale, but look at some tourism. Look at some ways to bring people in. We have a great natural resource here in this scenery and the geography here, and it's not being advertised to the outside world. And do I want to see 50,000 people descend on Hopkinton? No. But I think we can do some things that will bring in some tourist dollars because of our proximity to the Adirondacks, because of our proximity to St. Lawrence, and those dollars will allow us to do a lot more with this town and make it a lot more appealing.
Jody Wenzel, if elected, what will your number one priority be?
First, I need to familiarize myself with the inner workings of how a municipality works a little bit more. I have worked in the business world a lot on for-profit projects, but I need to dig a little deeper into the workings of the town. I am familiar on the surface with a lot of the issues facing this town, the sales tax issue, the solar law that's coming up, some issues with the highway department, but my knowledge of them is the same as most of you. It's from attending meetings and from what I can read. As a board member, I can get a little more insight into those and familiarize myself, do a lot of research so that I have the knowledge to make reasonable decisions. Additionally, as Jeff said, I think it's critically important to make yourself available to the public. For people that maybe not want to speak up at a meeting, that you make yourself available so people can express their concerns, and then you can take those concerns forward. I'm pretty sure I was sitting right here and Jeff was sitting right there at the meeting. So we ended up, you know, agreeing to disagree on some points and agreeing to agree on others. And through that whole process, there were certainly voices that we did not see eye to eye on things, but yet we still got something done. And I think we came out with a very good product in the end. So I'm willing to listen to anyone. I'm willing to weigh any opinion, and I think I can carry that forward.
What their decision is, and we go from there.
I would first like to say, whoever asked that is a great question, because that really puts it at the heart of the matter out there. You know, who do you really represent when you're sitting on this board? And I think that what Debbie and Jeff said is absolutely accurate. At the end of the day, you have to move forward based on the opinion of the majority. However, the minority of the population still has a voice, and the considerations and issues that they bring up must be considered. You cannot simply ignore part of your constituency at the expense of another part. And I think that's where sometimes we get lost, that it's either right or wrong in today's society. A lot of times you're either on this side or on that side, and what we've forgotten is that most of the time the answer lies somewhere in the middle. Yes, we have to represent the majority, but not at the ultimate expense of the rights and feelings of the minority.
I'll read this one twice, it's lengthy.
I think that investigating any and all grant and funds that are available from the state is an imperative for this community. If there's money out there, then we should be looking into it. Maybe all of the programs are not for us, but we at least need to be informed to make that decision. And I have liaison with state governments on various levels, not necessarily grant writing, but I have written many permits, environmental permits for large-scale facilities, and I have a lot of experience doing that. And if it's a matter of having somebody do the research and write the grant, then I would absolutely be willing to do that. At this point in time, I don't feel I have enough information on the programs that are out there, simply because it's not something I have been involved with yet, but it would be a priority moving forward, certainly. As I said in my opening remarks, I am not against renewable energy by any means. I think Jeff made a very valid point, though, in that the leases that the wind company executed are still in effect. They are still paying those leases. And it's hard to come up with a reason why they would expend thousands of dollars a month if they did not have a plan moving forward. They could easily have canceled those leases and make the issue completely moot. That has not happened. So while we do have a strong law, laws can be changed. And I think that is something that we just need to be cognizant of as we move forward. Until those leases are no longer in effect, this issue has the potential to rear its head again. That being said, I'm not against wind turbines. What I am against is a few landowners being able to implement an industrial wind farm that affects 100% of this community when only about 5% of the community financially benefits from it. And I think the wind law that we put into effect was not designed to stop the project. The developer stopped the project. The wind law did not. The wind law was aimed to protect landowners that did not want to participate, as all laws are in all communities. I can't put a landfill on my property because it would negatively affect my neighbors, and there are laws preventing me from doing that. I feel the same way about this project. Everyone would be affected and only a few would benefit. With solar, I think we need to keep the same things in mind. I think solar is a little bit less imposing on our neighbors, but we need to make sure that people that do not want to be involved are not significantly impacted, either financially due to loss of property value or severely inconvenienced by destroying the scenery that they enjoy.
I'm okay either way.
I have to plead a little ignorance here in that I did not know this was an issue. I think that we should hold the meetings whenever we can get the most community members involved in the meetings. And if that's not on the third Monday, then we should change it so that more people can go to both meetings. I'm sorry, that's kind of caught off guard by this one, but that's my opinion. These meetings are held for the benefit of the community, and we should hold them for the benefit of the most community members that can attend.
The next question, I'm merging several questions here.
I think some people a long time ago who knew a lot more about this than I did said it should be a government of the people, for the people, and I think that is of utmost importance. If that involves moving the public comment to the end to get more input, so be it. But I think that we are here to serve at the public's pleasure, and that ultimately the decisions we make need to reflect the general consensus of the community. So public input is of utmost importance.
Agree with everyone? No tax breaks.
The part of me that is a landowner that has a trail going through his property says there totally should be an exemption. But all kidding aside, no, I would agree with the rest of the candidates up here. There should not be an exemption for that. I have part of the St. Lawrence County Trail that cuts through a very small portion of my property. They provide insurance coverage for any riders that traverse that trail, and I think that's fair. They reached out to me, I agreed to it. That's really the end. I would agree. I think we need to be able to work together, but I also think it's important to have different perspectives on the board. My background is a little different than the rest of the board members. My background is engineering and project management. I've been involved in some very large projects and have worked on some very technical products and projects in the past, and I think that's a perspective that may have not been represented before. Whether good or bad, it's just a different perspective, and sometimes it takes a new perspective and a new point of view and someone who has not been involved in local government before to maybe breathe some fresh air into the community and get us on the right path moving forward. I would agree that at this point in time, I'm not sure if zoning is necessary. However, I think if we are going to look to the future, to get development grants from the state, to look at increasing business or investment or housing, I think the senior housing idea is actually a very good one and not something I had considered before. But I think if you're going to look into projects like that, it may become a necessity. This community, as it exists right now, is fairly small, and I think that the laws we currently have regulate land usage fairly well. But going forward, I think it is something that, as we look for input from outside, investment from outside, it is something that we definitely need to be open to as a possibility in the future.
All right, Jody.
Most of my experience with budgets is in the private sector. I have not done a municipal budget, but I have a great deal of experience doing budgets for-profit companies, which obviously a little bit different because you're always striving to make more money next year than you did this year. That being said, I did spend about 10 years of my professional career in a position where I was tasked solely with cost savings. I had one major international corporation, and I went in and my job was simply to find and identify and implement cost savings for them on an international scale. So this is something that I do have some experience with, not just on the ground floor, but projects and evaluating projects. What has merit? What can we push off? Where can we find savings? Without having some knowledge of the inner workings of how a municipal budget works, but we even dug down as far as getting terms with some of our vendors to push out a little bit more so you can earn a little extra interest on the money you currently have and saving money that way. It's something that I've done for many different companies, and I think that I would pick it up fairly quickly. Like I said, I haven't done one for a community before, but it's something that I would want to be intricately involved with, and I think I could bring something to that just with my experience.
Jody Wenzel?
Thank you. I think the summer days that we do is a great event, and I think that it brings a lot of people out. I know that when I first moved here, that was something that we came to every summer because we didn't really have a lot of interaction with our neighbors, and that was something that brought everybody together. And I think events like that could be expanded. Great, we do a Hopkinton Summer Days. What if we did a Christmas in the park or something like that? We don't have to go extravagant, but you can do events that bring everyone together and make it something that's worth coming to. Or even a Halloween for the kids and do a costume contest. Stuff like that to get people involved. I think you'd see more involvement in local government if you could get a greater sense of community through events like that. And I think if you could build the community, that feeling of community, especially now after the last couple of years where we did have such a divided position among residents here, I think that could really serve us well.
I agree. I think the social setting is definitely.
My experience really in that regard is from the Wind Advisory Board, and they were, the Parishville board members were very helpful to us, so I always thought it was a good relationship. I do agree with Vicki that we need to work with our neighboring towns. It should not be an adversarial relationship. These are, unfortunately, smaller communities. So shared services, shared knowledge, and shared influence even on county government is very beneficial to both of us. And I think that we need to foster that relationship to the point where everyone benefits from it. I have not personally experienced anything negative. I simply by the fact the question was asked, guessing that there is some overtones of a not maybe the best relationship, but like I said, my experience has been good, and I think that is a relationship that we do need moving forward. I have nothing but good things to say about it. My son attended for many years, and I always thought it was a very worthwhile and well-run program. I would absolutely support it. I would agree with what Vicki said. I can say definitively that the wind project is obviously the one point of reference we have here, and I absolutely did not support it for that. There was some misconception in the community about how the pilot would benefit us, in that there was a lot of thought that this would be a ton of extra money when it would be offset. It's not actually just a whole bunch of extra money for the community. Forgive me, it's been a little while since I've looked at how this is calculated, so I'm sure some of you know more about this than I do, but it wasn't just an extra amount of money we would have gotten. it would be, our aid that we receive from the state and other sources would be scaled back in response to that. So at the time, at least with the information I have on the pilot that was proposed or was being talked about with the wind project, I didn't see the benefit. There was far superior benefit to taxing them at full value. Now, that being said, if there were to be a project that was proposed for this town that was economically beneficial, created jobs, did not impede upon people's enjoyment of their property and or life here, and was contingent upon a pilot being issued, I would certainly consider looking at that again. But everything I've read and all the experience I have with them thus far, I did not support.
Properly.
I would agree, there is a law on the books right now that outlines pretty clearly what a conflict is and who or who does not have one. And if you fall into the category where the law says you have one, then you need to recuse yourself. It was also my understanding at one time when this came up with the wind law that this was gonna be looked at again by an ethics board. I don't know if that's actually happened, I don't think it has yet, but just to clarify that a little bit. So that I think I would support that happening to make sure that that law was clarified and was very sound, but I think the way the law is written now is pretty clear and should be followed as it was written. I agree 100%. I think any input from the community as to how we can bring business to this town would be welcome. And even input from outside the community. As we were talking before about, any grants or money that was available from the state, any guidance or advice that would be available from outside sources, while we may not take all of it or it may not all be applicable to us, if it's out there and it's available, then we should look at it. This town needs investment, it needs businesses, it needs growth, and however we can do that, I think is something we need to look at seriously. I agree. I mean, there's obviously a procedure in place, a law in place, and that needs to be followed. And beyond that, I think it's just smart business to do it that way. You want to make sure you're getting the best price for the service you're looking for. But at the end of the day, you need to follow the law as it's written. I got involved in this election based on my experience with the Wind Advisory Board, and this is not something I ever thought I would do. I'll be perfectly honest that I said that when I joined the Wind Board, and I'm saying it again now. But through the process, through the development of that wind law, I saw that the town was very divided. I saw that the infusion of some new ideas and a different perspective from someone who came from a slightly different background. My job experience, my life experience is a little different than what the rest of the candidates and even the current town board is, and I thought that I might be able to do some good here. This town needs to move forward. We need progress, we need development, we need ideas, and I think in order to take that next step and to move forward, we need some new faces, some new perspectives that perhaps we haven't had before. I think there's a lot of potential here. When I graduated from college, I took a job in Boston for a year, and after a year, I couldn't take it living there, and I moved back here. And that told me a lot about this community, and I think there's a lot of potential here. And even through our differences, I think that this is a very strong community. And I hope that I have answered your questions tonight. I can tell you that this response, this showing of the community is much greater than what we expected. And I think all of us can say that we greatly appreciate you taking the time to come out. Your questions have given us a great deal of insight as to what your concerns are. And I hope that we provided satisfactory answers to you. I will ask you for your vote on November 5th, and I hope that you give it to me. I have to give myself a plug, come on. And by all means, if you have any questions for me, please reach out to me. I will stick around a little while after this to answer any questions anybody might have, and I hope everybody has a good night.